Hi everyone. Today is a very special day of the year, and that's right, it's the third Monday of January. And so some gentleman called Cliff Arnall, a psychologist, coined this in 2004 as the most depressing day of the year. It's called Blue Monday. And the idea of this day is that you're so far away from Christmas that you can't remember all of the good times that you had. And you're so far away from the summer that you haven't really got too much to look forward to. You've got a long slog before then. The days are short. The weather is dreary and cold if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere, and all of this is apparently a recipe for mental disaster. And today, I want to talk about Blue Monday and whether I think that it's actually got any kind of substance behind it, if it's actually good that we even have a day that's coined Blue Monday, and also specifically, I want to talk about mental health and the strategies that I've used over my 32 years on this earth to cope with all of the ups and downs that life throws at us. So firstly, Blue Monday. Can you believe that there's somebody who's gone off to statistically analyze what the most depressing day of the year would be, almost as if they just want to taunt it into our face? I don't know about you, but before I started doing YouTube and when I was on Twitch, I think every Monday for me was probably the most depressing day of the year. Actually, there was probably an even more depressing time, and I think that was that Sunday period in the evening when you kind of think, oh God, I've kind of wasted the whole weekend and now I've got a whole week of slogging to go to. Luckily, at least for now, I get to play video games as my main source of income, and so I don't really have to worry about that 9 to 5 too much. But on the other hand, when you're making YouTube videos, you're quite often taking it home with you. And you do kind of miss that sort of 9 to 5 where you kind of clock in, you clock out, you don't have to worry too much. And especially when I was having that 2-month period where I was releasing videos every single day, well, I feel like I really enjoyed it. I think I could do it because there was a light at the end of the tunnel and I knew that those 2 months were going to end, and so it didn't make it too tricky. But honestly, though, I did get quite a lot of anxiety just popping up, thinking, what kind of a video am I going to release tomorrow? And I think that's something that a lot of YouTubers will feel, especially if they're trying to keep to a rather high-pressure schedule. And I guess it's something that I've always been fortunate with, because if for some reason I'm lacking some kind of creative ideas, I can always try and just dip into my replays and do a commentary on World of Tanks. So do I agree with Cliff Arnall in his assessment in 2004 that the third Monday of January is probably the most depressing day of the year? Yeah, I guess, holistically, when we think about it, it does really make sense and it does add up. But is it actually any worthwhile to recognize that there is the most depressing day of the year? I guess there's two ways of looking at it. There's one, that it would probably be bad for anyone who is feeling slightly down and thinking, oh no man, tomorrow it's going to be really bad. Oh God, get my tinfoil hat on. Tomorrow's going to be awful because it's the most depressing day of the year. And there's another way of looking at it. It's that at least when today is over, that it's going to be onwards and upwards, right? It can only get better from here. You're going to be closer towards the summer every single day. The days get a little bit longer. Spring is coming. You're going to see all of the growth, all of the beautiful growth inside nature. And maybe the sun will stick around a little longer and we'll get a nice big boost of vitamin D. And so, by specifically marking a day as the most depressing day of the year, it can be a pretty big deal for anyone who is suffering from depression, as they're basically putting a hurdle there that you feel you really have to get over. And for some people, it can be the final straw. Now, thankfully, while I guess depression and mental anguish is always subjective, and you can only experience it from your perspective, and it's quite tricky to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, something that I would never really declare myself. I would never really declare, oh, I have been depressed at least at one time in my life. Sure, I've suffered from some fairly extreme anxiety over different periods of my life, and that's really what I want to talk about today, and specifically the coping mechanisms that I have developed and the coping mechanisms that I've read about that have really helped me to be able to get through those scenarios and to get through days like this if you're feeling like it's a little bit too heavy. So there have been several periods of my life where I really feel like everything was getting a bit too much and everything was overwhelming. For me personally, my anxiety flares up at least the most when I feel that things are happening that are outside of my control, and that's upsetting because I do feel that while I'm definitely not a perfectionist, I mean, come on, I've got like plates and stuff and my desk is absolutely filthy. I'm not a perfectionist like that, but at least when I want to get something done, I want to get it done right. And sometimes the fact that I want to make the outcome as positive and as wonderful as I possibly can, it can feel as if there are huge amounts of hurdles to be able to get over, and that was what would cause my anxiety, just getting things started initially. How many of you out there will just store up things every single day thinking, oh, I can do that tomorrow, I can do that next month, I can do that next week, and then you suddenly feel, oh my word, everything has got too much now and I've got far too many things to do, and then you just go and then procrastinate. For me, I would play video games, I would go and speak to friends, I would go and watch TV. Pretty normal, right? And I think in the end, the only solution was actually to get it started. There have been two main things that are really coming out in my life and thinking about this, and that was when I had to write my thesis for my undergraduate degree, and then when I had to write my thesis for my postgraduate degree for my doctorate. Now, every single time, it got a little bit worse. I know, I don't mean the outcome. Hopefully my writing was getting a little bit better and my scientific method was improving. But when I did my first degree and when I was writing my thesis for it, my undergraduate thesis, wow, that felt like the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. And that's because you're actually effectively having to do something new. You're going to have to do experiments by yourself. You're having to try and draw your own conclusions. And it's not enough really at that stage to be able to just go on Wikipedia and kind of lift off some of the references and look like you've actually done any kind of reading. When I was at university, in my final year, I really put off writing it far too long. I think I was playing something like Warhammer Online at the time. Oh my lord, and World of Warcraft probably. And then, wham bam, I came down with glandular fever and I felt like I'd been hit by a ton of bricks. And then suddenly, oh my lord, I really can't actually finish this in the time that I had. Had a bit of a breakdown. Ended up, fortunately, going to the doctor who said, yeah, you are sick. You need to take a week off, mate. And signed that off, and then I got a week-long extension, and then woo, everything seemed to work out fine. So what I learned from that specifically is that when you have to do things which are very challenging, very difficult, things that have never either been done before or things that you at least have to show a little bit of instinct and a little bit of flair in them, that can be terrifying. Absolutely, utterly terrifying. But what I also found out is that my supervisor at the time was actually really awesome. And while there are deadlines and there are a structure in there that's meant to get everybody to finish things on time, also, if you do reach out to people and you explain the situation and you go about it in the right way, you'll more often than not find out that people are quite accommodating. And thankfully, due to my awesome supervisor getting me that extension, with of course the doctor's note that I had, then it allowed me to go on to complete my degree, and it actually was a springboard that motivated me to really start to work incredibly hard for the final year of my degree, and then ended up that inspired me to then go on to do my doctorate with my supervisor at the time as well. So everything felt like it was going swimmingly for the first couple of years of my doctorate, and then you realize, oh my word, it's really not enough to just look on Wikipedia to be able to take references anymore. And you know what? It's also not enough to go and read loads of academic papers, because in the end you're going to be able to learn from them, but you actually have to make the moves yourself, and you have to find that inspiration from within yourself to be a little bit creative and to be able to prove your thesis. And oh my word, it was absolutely terrifying. I never felt so panic-ridden, so full of anxiety as I did during that period of my life. I even turned to, there was this terrible panic spray. Sounds bizarre, right? I like a coping spray, some kind of herbal coping spray that I thought by spraying it into my mouth and on my tongue that it was natural. Oh my lord. That's how crazy I was back then. Honestly, nothing had I had never come to feeling so defeated in my life, and that it was just absolutely impossible to be able to keep going forwards as to when I had to write that gosh darn document. And in the end, I want to come back to how I started. I started by saying, how many of you out there let things build up and let things build up, and then it feels like you've got this huge mountain in front of you, and then you think, oh, I've kind of failed, what's the point of even starting? I was in that exact same position with my thesis, and it's just about making the first move. And oh my word, at least for me, when I got started, even if you just made some tiny progress, it suddenly made everything more manageable. As soon as you start putting one foot in front of the other and you feel like you're getting just a little bit closer towards your goal, then look, everything doesn't fall into place. But if you keep just putting one foot in front of the other and you make conscientious steps towards what you need to achieve, you're going to get there. It's going to be very hard work. You can make it, but it's just that first step that's the hardest. I guess it's cliche in saying, but really, you've got to make it. You've got to make that first step. I was actually writing my thesis while I was starting this YouTube channel back in 2013 and 2014. And there was a 6-month period where I pretty much slept for about 6 hours a day. I didn't speak to my friends or my family at all. They knew what I was doing. They knew I was doing some hard grind. I ate kind of ready meals from the supermarket a couple times a day, and all that would happen is I would get up in the morning, probably about, I would get up about 8, and then I would write my thesis right up until I made a YouTube video. Then I would stream, then I would continue writing my thesis with that ready meal until 2 a.m. and then I would go to bed. And I did that for 6 months, and that's how I ended up actually managing to do that. While also kind of start out on Twitch and YouTube. It was absolutely bizarre and one of the most testing times of my life. And yeah, for about 6 months, even after finishing, I had these heat waves of kind of anxiety coming through where you'll think about having to get yourself into that situation. You'll think about maybe something that would be able to pop up inside your life that would remind you about that time that you spent. Something as simple as, oh yeah, that was the ready meal that I was eating for pretty much every day for 6 months when you saw it at the supermarket. And your mind's there constantly firing off these pulses, these waves of emotions that are just trying to overcome you and try to capsize the ship that you're trying to propel forwards on this journey, the journey of life. And so all of this stems back from a marvelous man that I met when I was 17. I know his first name. His name was Chris, but back then while I was at school, his name was Mr. Cullen, and he was an absolute legend. And yeah, when I was there, he taught some Buddhism inside his classes. Look, it's not the Buddhism that saved me, but you can kind of tell the kind of guy that he was. I went for a little bit of counseling with him because I was having some troubles in 2000 when I was 17. I had just a few issues that I don't really want to go into, but I talked them all through with the gentleman. And I want to say one of the most important things in life that I figured out from Mr. Cullen, from Chris, and that was that you can't stop the way you feel. You can't stop the way that these emotions will approach you, and you can't stop the way that these emotions they will ride. You'll have your highs and you'll have your lows. You can't stop these waves of emotions coming. All that you can learn is a couple of things. One, you can learn how to ride the emotions. You can learn that once you've got a wave of negative feeling, that okay, this is natural, yeah, everything sucks, but at least if you recognize it, you don't let that be able to impact all of the other aspects of your life. For example, let's say you're having a really down day and you realize that, and you're going to recognize it, and then you're not going to allow that to affect the way that you interact with maybe your husband or your wife or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your sister or your mother or your brother. By recognizing these emotions and just learning to ride them and not to go crazy during the highs, although you definitely want to feel them. You want to feel those highs, the natural highs of life. And then when you sink down to the bottom and you feel those lows, that you just got to try and ride them out because they're temporary. And that's one of the most important things that I figured out, and something that I want to highlight today and share with all of you. And that is that all of your emotions, all of the way that you're feeling about something now is temporary. And the way that you're going to feel in an hour from now, the way that you're going to feel in a day from now, the way you're going to feel in a week from now, specifically yourself, but also about an event that might be happening right now, will be completely different. And that is the most important thing that I've figured out. It is my main coping mechanism. And it also allows me to reflect after events quite a lot. Sometimes something will happen immediately now, and I realize that I can't have a holistic and objective opinion about the event. I can't trust my feelings, my natural and sometimes irrational and those emotive feelings that you'll feel overpowering your judgment immediately after something has happened. And by taking a step back and realizing I'm going to feel completely different about this tomorrow, I'm going to feel completely different about this in a week, it can provide you with a a lot of a better perspective, and it can also allow you to cope with any negative feelings that you are having now. Sometimes things pop up which it will take a very long time to get over. I've had quite a few events in my life where, honestly, it's taken pretty much half a decade or even an entire decade before I have truly figured out what happened and been able to either to forgive those or be able to accept it, learn from it, and then try and keep going forwards. And so these are the two mechanisms that I have used inside my life that I think are of the most important things that I have learned within it. That all of your emotions are temporary. You can't stop yourself feeling them. All you can do is learn how to ride the waves of emotions that approach you. And also, importantly, that the way that you're going to feel about any event that happens now or anything is going to be completely different over a various period of time. And so I would challenge all of you out there who are maybe feeling a little bit down on this Blue Monday to maybe try and embrace these couple of things. And more importantly, realize that it's only up from here, at least for the rest of the year.